Hey everybody, welcome to the Rotowire Fantasy Football Podcast. As always, brought to you by the good folks at WynnBET, W-Y-N-N-B-E-T. I'm Jeff Erickson here with Chris Liss. Another weekend, another major young running back goes down with an injury, torn ACL for J.K. Dobbins. He is out for the year. He might have some LCL damage. We're checking that part out too. Massive injury. It's been a busy injury preseason. Akers first before the preseason games even started, Travis Etienne, and now the news on Dobbins. Really awful news, Chris.
Yeah, I actually was really quiet for a while, right? It was just Akers, and then Michael Thomas, we're like, oh, he actually had surgery in June, but it wasn't new. It was just we didn't hear about it. And then there was nothing. I mean, there was, a month went by where, at least a few weeks went by where I'm like, man, we're overdue for some disastrous news. And then Etienne, which hit me really hard. Personally. And then, now Dobbins, those are two guys. Etienne was going the third and fourth, and Dobbins was going in the third. And so those are two big ones. Akers was going late first, early second. So that's, three pretty big preseason injuries. And then, of course, we got Irv Smith is out for, I don't know. We don't know exactly how long, but maybe a few weeks. T.Y. Hilton is basically undraftable now. I moved T.Y. Hilton way down. So, yeah, it's starting to, of course, the preseason took out some, players that we wanted to see.
Yes. Yeah, it did. And, let's look at what it does with the Ravens. Gus Edwards is obviously now the starter. There's you look behind him and, Justice Hill hasn't been healthy. He's been out for a while. Tyson Williams, that's Ty'' Williams, and Justice Hill are the guys. I wouldn't be surprised. We got 2 weeks now still at the start of the season. I wouldn't be surprised they bring somebody else in. The reports I'm seeing is suggesting that Williams will be the guy and not Hill, just because Hill's been hurt.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Hill's like a pass catcher. So if he gets healthy and makes the team, he may be the third down guy because Gus Edwards doesn't catch passes, at least as far as we know. And I don't know what Tyson Williams is, skill set consists in, but it almost seems like you'll have Williams coming in as sort of like the dispel Edwards. And then maybe Hill in on third downs is what I would guess.
Right. And, the thing I kind of wonder about, though, too, is, maybe it's just they never asked Gus Edwards. Gus Williams would be really difficult to do, but Gus Edwards, whether or not he could actually, if he's capable of catching passes, because, maybe he can. It's just they didn't need him to.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird what's involved with a running back catching passes, right? He's never caught passes. Mm-hmm. And they had, teams with Ingram would catch passes and Dobbins caught a few. He didn't catch a lot, but he caught some last year. And they had, players that caught passes, and Gus Edwards caught 7 passes last year in 16 games, 2 passes in 11 games in 2018. Sorry, 9 passes last year, 7 in 2019. I think if he could, he would. I think they see him in practice every day. I'm sure he can block. He's 6'1", 238. I'm sure he can do that part of the third down work, right? I mean, it's not always just size, but he's like having an extra tight end in there, or maybe more because he's short for his weight. But yeah, I have Edwards projected pretty highly. I think I'm like 22nd in PPR. I have him for pretty heavy workload carry wise and 9 touchdowns. So I have him 22nd.
Doesn't quite get the same boost as James Robinson did with Jacksonville when Etienne went out, but still a pretty big boost.
Yeah, I think the difference in in non-PPR, even half, I think it's close. But I think in full PPR, the difference is Robinson can catch passes.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I'm just looking at his college stats. Now, even in college, 13 was the most he ever caught at Rutgers. So, yeah, it is not the same sort of guy. Plus, they just don't throw to the backs as often, too. I think that's the other difference. So, that's pretty much looking like at a 4th or 5th round price on him. Darrell Henderson or Gus Edwards?
Probably Edwards. I'm a little nervous about Henderson. There seems something a little shaky about him. I like his skills. Like, he looks good. I watched the guy play. He's got burst. He gets the ball and he turns the corner fast. And you think, this guy's, he looks pretty good, but there's always something with him. He's always been a little nicked up. He's nicked up this preseason. They brought in Sony Michel, who might be good. I mean, Sony Michel's always had this knee problem, but if he ever got over the knee problem, he might be good. And I think Michel could just take the job. Like, I don't know that Henderson is that established. But Gus Edwards is the guy there. He's going to be a poor man's Derrick Henry. He's not as good. He's not as big or powerful, but he's in a great situation where they're going to run a lot and they don't have a lot of depth. So I think that Edwards is going to get like 280 carries. I mean, I think he's going to get a ton of work, and he's stout enough to handle it, I think. And it's just like a guaranteed, 1,000 yards, 9-10 touchdown. I just think it's just like a real floor pick in the 5th round.
Yeah, I think so. I wouldn't be surprised in the next week and a half you see Edwards really start to climb. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts moving into the 4th. It'd be my best bet.
It's like Chris Carson with durability, or at least no durability questions.
Right.
I mean, Chris Carson will catch some passes, so he's not quite as much upside as Carson, but I just can handle so much more workload. I don't know. I think it's, maybe 4th round will be right. I might move him up. I have him at like 22nd. It's hard in the PPR to make the stats work. I have him at 287 carries, and maybe I'll give him a 10th touchdown or something, but it's really hard to push him beyond guys who get 30 catches when he has 10 or something.
Yeah. That's the question is, does Tyson Williams or anybody else that they add, does that all of a sudden change things, get it to the point where there's now they're going to be a pass catcher in there in the mix as well? Because you know what? We always say, well, there's no one behind him. Oh, there's nobody. It's just nobody we recognize, nobody that we're familiar with. But teams always find a guy that's someone.
It's the opposite. I moved him up to 21 from 22. I just gave him another touchdown. But it's the opposite thing with but Marlon Mack and Nyheim Hines are there in Indy. It's like we know the names, so we assume that's a threat. We don't know the names. We assume there's no threat. Just because we know the name on the jersey doesn't mean there's not a guy on the roster who's a professional football player, who's a sicker athlete than you've ever played with at any level, who's trying his hardest to get as much work as he can. So, yeah, I think the names on the jerseys are less relevant unless it's somebody who's really, really good.
Yeah. And looking at Tyson Williams, he didn't play at all last season. He graduated from BYU 2019. He's the guy that's kind of turning a couple of heads at least. He's getting opportunities. He's impressed a little bit in a preseason game against the Panthers. Took 5 touches on Saturday against the football team, went 5 for 41. That seems good. Nate McCrary's also there, by the way. There's another name for you too. But the thing is, Williams, there's a case. He's making a case for it. Back in August, or early August, it is August, but mid-August, we had a note saying he's making a case for making the team. This is well before any injuries came up. So perhaps this is something that could be interesting. He spent all of 2020 or most of 2020 on the Ravens practice squad, so they do know him too. So he could step right in. He could be that guy. I want to look at the macro issue here, though, too. We lost Akers. We've lost ETN. Now we've lost Dobbins. Is that putting any pressure on you to try to get those 2 running backs early now that the pool has been depleted a little bit?
No, because it's not been depleted, because Edwards is almost where Dobbins was. Robinson is ahead of where either he or ETN were.
True.
And so now Darrell Williams / Sony Michel has not replaced Akers yet, but that, we've had that for a month.
Darrell Henderson.
Who did I say? Darrell Williams. Yeah, Darrell Henderson. They haven't replaced Akers in the ADP, but of course, Darrell Henderson's still in the low 20s. So, we still have the same amount of depth we had. It's just different names. So I don't think it changes anything. I do want to get a running back in the 1st round. I've seen actually in a lot of the recent boards that Tom Kessenich posts from the NFFC that there's a lot of Devontae Adams and Stephon Diggs and Tyreek Hill's going in, mid 1st round now. They're pushing up these receivers, and there's a lot of heavy receiver builds. And man, if you had a 0 running back with James Robinson and Gus Edwards, that looks like a good team right now. Of course,
right.
You're catching perfect by doing that. But the point is just that I've seen a lot of receivers creep up into the 1st round, those 2nd round no-brainer guys, because the running backs, people are sketched about all of them. It's really weird. It's like nobody was doing that early in the draft season. Now you see Nick Chubb and Saquon Barkley going in the 2nd round routinely. It's Najee Harris going in the middle of the 2nd round. It's very strange.
Well, yeah, and just look at your latest beat Chris Liss. You saw Metcalf go up into the 1st round too, and just that changed things.
Well, that was because of me. That was because
was because of you, because he knew that you would have taken him. Yeah.
Yes, he knew he had no chance to get him in round 2, which was true. I mean, unless crazy stuff fell to me like Barkley and Taylor, which wasn't probably going to happen. Right. And so, he had basically no chance to get him in round 2, and he was like, "If he's the guy you like, you got to take him." So he did, but he might have taken a chance had he known I wasn't for sure going to take him in round 2 ahead of him. But yeah, Metcalf went in the first round. I mean, I don't think it's a bad pick. If you know you're not getting him in the second, it's not a bad pick.
Yeah. Looking at my grid for Friday, I did beat Jeff Erickson too, and Bob Cramitola, who's in every single one of my drafts. I think both of our drafts, he's always in there. Went 4 receivers to start, and of course, he got Edwards in the 11th round. So he's already like his strategy is already kind of vindicated. If he's already got himself a running back starter and 4 stud wideouts and Kyler Murray.
Well, that's great. And that is the whole point of the zero running back philosophy. And just to back it up, it was Sean Siegel who did it and won a big contest in it, about 6 years ago. And it was everyone was drafting running backs, and he went all receivers in a full PPR with 3 receivers and a flex. I don't like reading columns when I see like it's a 2 receiver league with 1 flex and 2 running backs,
and a no PPR.
And zero running back just doesn't work. Yeah, well, of course it doesn't work in that format. Of course not. But in a 3 receiver flex full PPR, then it can work. Now, it hasn't worked in recent years, A, because a lot of people are doing it, B, because the running backs usually 1 year league the last few years. But this is the philosophy behind it, is you get these, receivers are more volatile week to week, but they're more reliable year to year. So, the chances that a healthy Tyreek Hill or Devontae Adams or Metcalf or Calvin Ridley doesn't, live up to not necessarily his ADP, but 90 catches for 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns, it's almost nothing. If they're healthy all year, they're going to do it. And they don't get as hurt as often as running back. So the idea is you bank like 3 or 4 guys at the beginning of your draft that are just rock solid. And also you don't have to make lineup decisions where do I start Devonta Smith or Jarvis Landry this week? You won't know. Here you leave these receivers in, running backs are more obvious, and then you gamble. But part of the gamble isn't just like, I'll take Mike Davis in round 5. Part of the gamble is running backs get hurt a lot. So if you have James Robinson and ETN gets hurt, all of a sudden he's a 3rd round back. If you have Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins gets hurt, all of a sudden he's a 4th or 5th round back. And suddenly you have the elite running back without drafting him. Running backs can really change value quickly when the guy ahead of him gets hurt. Of course, we can't predict that, but you get a couple of guys you can use, like a Mike Davis or a Myles Gaskin or something, and then you get a whole bunch of guys and Robinson was usable already. Edwards was quasi-usable in a PPR, not really already, but you get a whole bunch of guys like that, one injury happens and suddenly they are just as good as the other running backs. And so it can really work. But if it doesn't work, it just doesn't work. If you don't get the running backs to pop, you got Nyheim Hines in your lineup every week, and it's not that fun. But it's one of those all or nothing strategies. But when it pops, you can win the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's, and I like building that way. It is fun. I've had a lot of receiver heavy drafts. I did not do that, however, in the latest Beat Jeff Erickson. We'll talk about that in a second. First, a note from our friends at WinBet. If there's one thing we appreciate here at Rotowire, it's making good decisions, and even more so, making the right decision. Listen up, folks. I have an incredible offer for you with Rotowire's newest partner, WinBet, the premier digital casino and sportsbook app. WinBet is now the exclusive sponsor for Rotowire's Fantasy Podcast. WinBet brings you all the latest action with the user-friendly interface, moneyline bets, boosted parlays, over-unders, round robins, live betting, and so much more at your fingertips. Want a break from your sports betting? Head into WinBet's digital casino and take a spin on roulette, double down in blackjack, slam the slots, or try your hand at Baccarat. WinBet is currently available in 6 states: Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, Virginia, while rapidly expanding. At WinBet, the possibilities are limitless. WinBet is currently offering all Rotowire listeners a risk-free bet up to $500 on your first wager. Download WinBet now. That's WYNNBET. WinBet, the exclusive partner for Rotowire's Fantasy Podcast. Jeff and Chris here, breaking down the news over the weekend. I did beat Jeff Erickson too. Probably my last beat Jeff Erickson. Maybe I'd be coaxed into doing one more. But I went 10, Chris, and I 10th in this one. And I wanted to be at the back end of the draft. I've been doing, like, the last one I did was not first. In 3rd round reversal, I really like getting those first 3 picks with the, getting that towards the back end of the 1st round, because you get early 2nd, early 3rd. I really think there's a little bit of an advantage in that. And I was pretty happy with that. It was a fun draft because it was different than most of my drafts. I went running back heavy early and then just tried to go volume and wide receiver. It's the opposite of what we were just talking about with what Bob Cramitola did in our draft. And he's a good player. I always refer to him a lot because he's there a lot. He does well, but I don't think it's wrong to do what he did. I think there's a right spot for everything. But I kind of had fun doing this because you get your 3 stud running backs, and then you just load up volume at wide receiver, not try to chase some of these the back end running backs.
Yeah, I like your team, unfortunately, because I like to say it's garbage when I see it, and I don't dislike this one. I mean, Chubb and Metcalf is a great start, which Alan Seslowski will appreciate.
Yes.
And everything's a great start with the first 2 picks. But I like Chubb at 10. I like Metcalf. And then James Robinson, early 3rd. Would I have taken him? I'm looking at it. You didn't have those great receivers. Robinson and Lamb went right before you. You could have taken Keenan Allen, but I'm not a huge Keenan Allen guy. I'm looking at this. Who else could you have taken? Godwin, I like. Waller, Godwin. Thank God he didn't take Dobbins. Waller and God. I think that's about where Robinson should go. I mean, it's just who else are you going to take? I mean, it's like who is he going to take? Okay, so that's good. Then you went Kittle in late 4, which he was after Pitts already, which was interesting. You could have taken Judy. You could have taken, but the receivers are kind of a dime a dozen there. They're all okay. They're all the same.
And that's as late as Kittle goes too. You usually see him in the 3rd.
The thing about Kittle is he's hurt. George Brittle is hurt so often, but if he's healthy, he's Kelsey, man. It's like if he's healthy, and we're crystal balling this health stuff. I mean, you don't really know, so it can be pretty good. And then you get Robbie Anderson. I think is just sort of easy money there. Just just very floor based. If he's healthy, he'll get 80, 90 catches minimum if he's healthy. Darrell Henderson in 6. I don't mind it. I'm looking at his late 6. Yeah. And who else could you have taken? Oh, I like Debo better, but he is the starter. I mean, he is good, and he's the starter in a good offense. So I can't really knock it.
And there was a note out that day. Sean Payton said that Henderson's getting a heavy workload. We're just trying to get, everybody else up to speed. And Sony Michel he's referring to mostly there. But I do think I'm going to take him at his word a little bit. I mean, I know it's Sean Payton. Probably that's my fault if it doesn't work, but.
Sean McVay.
Sean McVay.
Sean Payton is coaching 2 teams this year. It's incredible. He's no one's ever done that before. That would be a good task. And also like me saying he's kind of shaky and injury. Whatever. Again, it's crystal balling with injury stuff. You have a little inkling that he's a little fragile, but we don't know. What if he plays 14 games and he's good? I mean, he could be a monster. So you get Herbert, who's my guy. And early round 7, I just think he's an easy pick. And then, your 3rd receiver is a whole bunch of, Gallup. You got Michael Thomas, which I don't mind there. As long, with the 10-man bench, why not? You got Gallup, you got Elijah Moore, you got Ruggs, Terrace Marshall. I don't like Bateman and Thomas. I wouldn't have taken Bateman there, but it's, whatever. It's the 13th round. Just because you got 2 injured guys, it is a 10-man bench, but you start to get a little. I love the Rams defense. Peoples-Jones I like as a sleeper. You got the Chiefs kicker. I like paying for a kicker in defense in rounds 15 through 20. Why not get good ones? I don't know why, that's just so easily available. You get Darnold, the great Sam Darnold. Cole Kmet is a nice backup tight end. And Zacchaeus, who might, who knows, everyone's talking about Justin Gage, but nobody really knows what's going to shake out there. So yeah, I like it. I think it's a good draft. Yeah.
And the thing is, I like Gallup better than the crowd. Let's talk about Thomas for a second here, because I have said that I won't be drafting him, but A, he was like 2 rounds after ADP. B, it fit my team. I think that was the really critical part about it is I had 3 receivers ahead of him. I didn't need to start him right away, but I don't have elite wide receivers. I have good wide receivers, but I didn't get the obvious elite ones. I kind of needed to take a swing. Plus, Winston was named the starter just that day too,
which helps. Yeah, that helps.
Yeah,
this is a good team because if Metcalf is elite and then Anderson is very solid, so you're only looking at 1 slot because you got 3 running backs. Now someone's going to get hurt, obviously, but right now your starting team, you just need 1 receiver, and Gallup is okay. Gallup is fine, or Elijah Moore if he actually is as good as the hype. And then maybe 4 or 5 weeks into the season, if Thomas is healthy. Then you've got Metcalf, Thomas, and Robbie Anderson is your 3, and now you're in really good shape. So with Kittle and Herbert, it's funny. Like you're doing the same thing I do. Is I've been going running back early and then paying up for the tight end and the QB, and then just winging it with that last receiver. I feel like that's just what the draft gives you. I mean, there's lots of Jarvis Landry and Mike Williams and Michael Pittman and Antonio Brown and those guys that you can get. Debo's there pretty late sometimes. So I think it's just the way structurally that it's easiest to draft.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was going for. Question on Michael Thomas. Is he in his right mind to play this year? That's a question. I mean, that's a legit question after his tweets, after like ghosting the Saints and all that. And I wouldn't spend a top 3 wide receiver pick on him. I wouldn't spend a 6th or 7th round pick on him. I got him in the 9th, knowing the risks, knowing that 9th round picks fail all the time. I think that's the way I look at it. Like the pick right after that was Sony Michel. Okay. There's no certainty in that pick either. That's the sort of thing I was looking at there. Picks in that level fail. Could I have taken a higher floor guy? I could have. But the way I look at it is that at this point you're looking for upside. So that's kind of what I'm looking at, and that's the tricky part there.
No, I think the Thomas pick is good. I mean, I'm out on Michael Thomas in a 6-man bench league where you got to wait around. He might not be himself, as you said. He might be estranged from the team. Something may go wrong. But in a 10-man bench, 9th round, where you have 3 receivers, it's a great pick. That's who I would have picked too.
Yeah. So I'll try to get the link to post on YouTube here in a second here. I guess the link doesn't work. I have to do a screenshot. So bear with me on the technology. But before I do that, got to do a quick note from Dynasty owner. Are you tired of the same old fantasy football leagues that get canceled after a year or so? If this so, Dynasty owner has your back. Go to dynastyowner.com. New leagues for the 2021 season are forming now. Dynasty Owner unites the fun and excitement of fantasy football with the skill and strategy of the front office by incorporating a salary cap and real NFL player salaries for the diehard fantasy football fans that want the real GM experience. Dynasty Owner adds a whole new level of strategy. Are you worried that you won't be able to find anyone to play in your league with? Don't worry. Dynasty Owner can help you fill your league with fantasy football enthusiasts like yourself. You won't have to worry about finding enough players. You can choose to start a league, joining an existing one, or purchase a team from a previous owner. If you're serious about the big leagues, go to dynastyowner.com/Rotowire and start your dynasty today. Jeff Erickson here with Chris Liss. Chris, I wanted to talk about a couple other things. Let me see if I can do the screen share here. We're going to try some technology. Bear with me, folks. Technology while we're doing this here. So see if this works real quick. No, we're going to try share screen. Go to that page. No, bear with that. That didn't quite work either. So screw that. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to get you a look at the draft grid, but that's why this is why.
Why don't you can tweet it out. You can just tweet it out, like retweet the draft grid, and people who are watching probably.
That's a good idea. That's what I'll do.
You're more ambitious than me. I don't even try to do the stuff. Once I get better at this, it is cool to put up graphics and stuff while you're talking, but it's hard to do both.
Yeah, it is. Your guy Irv Smith, he got hurt. So you're wait on tight end guy. Tell me more about what you're doing in reaction to this. Who's your pivot to now?
Well, I moved him down to like 15 or 16. Well, Gronk was my other guy, so I started moving away from Gronk and onto Irv Smith because I just think Irv Smith could have got more targets than Gronk. So I moved him to like 15. We don't know how long he's out. It might be a few weeks. Might not be that big a deal. But of course, you got the Pianowski rule. Injury optimism, starting the season, giving yourself problems already. I saw Cole Kmet get drafted super high in the league, and it just made me start thinking like he's 2nd or 3rd year, but he's a 2nd round pick, and there's just no depth. It's just very similar to Irv Smith, right? Like early pick, no depth on the team, and Darnell Mooney has some buzz. I thought maybe he's too small, but you and I had that talk on XM where I started to come around. Maybe these like low BMI receivers can survive in the new, very sensitive environment for receivers that you can't touch or hurt a receiver. So now these skinny guys who are so quick are now, actually good. But I have Irv Smith at 15. If it turns out that it's a little worse, I'll move him down. But this is the free area for tight ends where you get them in the 15th, 16th round. So I'd rather have Irv Smith in week 3 than these other kind of tight ends that I don't really believe in. So I have him at 15.
Okay, that makes sense. It's tough spot there. It's just a bummer because a lot of times you just wait. Usually, if you're waiting on tight end, you should probably have 2 of them though. You usually don't. Although that's not always true. I did one draft where I waited and just have Gronk. So I'm really kind of working without a net here, but. We'll see about that.
Real man just has Gronk. Real man doesn't ever even think there's any need to back up Gronk. Yeah. Gronk is sufficient.
Gronk rules. Gronk smash. All right. So I look at Tunyon ahead of Smith now. Cole Kmet, who I think he's going. I think that was just like an anomaly. I've seen him go earlier in other drafts. I was a little surprised he was still there. And the funny thing is, I didn't really want to have. I didn't really need a second tight end after getting George Kittle.
Well, you did.
I do.
Yeah.
You just never know that you do. But that's true. But
no, you definitely need a second tight end. So somebody pointed out my Beat Chris List 2 team. One of our listeners pointed out I've already lost ETN in round 3, the min pick, and then I lost. I have Irv Smith in round 11. I have. He was my top tight end. Now I'm looking at it.
Ouch.
So I have him in round 11, and then I have T.Y. Hilton in round 12. So, whatever. You're 11th, 12th. I got Blake Jarwin, though, in round 17. So that's my tight end 1 now is Blake Jarwin.
Fine.
Yeah. That hurts a little bit. So I lost my 3rd round pick and my tight end. And then, one of my depth receivers, which is where I skimped a little bit. I was like, I can go volume at receiver. So I'll have a little work to do in that league.
Yeah, you will. You will there. So and now I'm looking at my roster in the first Beat Jefferson because I knew I also had ETN, so that kind of stinks. But I have Noah Fant and Jared Cook. I don't have Smith in that one. So okay, good. Just you it's funny when you do an early draft, you're like, okay, no whammies. Oh, whammy.
Well,
whammy.
No, but the thing is, like, people are like, oh, better luck next time. ETN in the 3rd, whatever. But like, if I get some injury luck going forward, like that's it. Like I lost ETN, I lost Irv Smith for a bit, and I lost T.Y. Hilton, T.Y. Hilton. And then for the next 4 weeks, I don't really, the music stops and I'm in a chair each week. I'll be just average at that point, maybe above average because you guys get hurt all the time. Like you can't be like, oh, I lost my 3rd round pick, I'm screwed. Maybe if you, lose McCaffrey or something, you're screwed. But if you lose your 3rd round pick, and then you get a little bit of luck, that's fine. You can't be, bitching and moaning too much about Dobbins or ETN. Akers hurts. It's a 1st round pick, but your 3rd round pick, those guys go down all the time or fail. So I'm not, I'm not like, oh, that team's doomed. I'm like, okay, there's some work to do basically.
Yeah, there is. So yeah, that's just, you got to get going on that. Keep grinding. You're not dead, but you just have to work a little harder early on. Everyone's going to run into some problems at some point. T.Y. Hilton also hurt, and it's kind of a nebulous sort of injury. They're talking about multiple weeks, but they didn't really say how clear.
Cross him off. There's just no reason to draft him. The upside was modest. The big takeaway from this is cross him off. Michael Pittman now probably goes back to the 6th, 7th round. He's almost certainly the number 1. I moved him to 43. I could actually move him up a couple, like to 40. I'm going to move him up a couple percent. See where he's now. 2% bump, 42, somewhere around that. But he is now the number 1 guy. Paris Campbell, there's physical talent through the roof, but he's just a name right now. He needs to, have an NFL career. He's just never done anything. I don't think you want to just, I would draft him, late. I moved him up. And then even, and I think that Zach Pascal is going to get some targets and frustrate the Campbell owners possibly.
I agree.
I think Pittman is just not definitely because he hasn't really established himself, but very likely the clear number 1 now. I think Hilton was the biggest problem with Hilton, that he was an impediment to Pittman, and now that's gone.
Yep, that's true. And at least gone for now. Going to miss multiple weeks. It's a disc issue in his neck.
But this just sounds bad, and it just sounds really bad. I don't know. A disc in the neck for a 31-year-old receiver. It just, who knows? I could be wrong, but I'm just like, I'm not, you don't wait around for T.Y. Hilton. You wait around for Michael Thomas if you have the bench space. You wait around for, you don't necessarily wait around for Irv Smith, but you could in the 18th round since I think he's a top 10 tight end. But waiting around for Hilton, who was like the 54th receiver when healthy and on my board, and that's probably about where people had him. What's the point of waiting around for the 54th receiver?
I hear you. T.Y. Hilton, just for the record, where was he? He was following as, you're right. He was way down there. He was the 65th receiver. Oh, no, that was after the injury. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I had him 54, so I'll just say 54th receiver.
Yeah. He's that's 51 drafts as start, from the weekend only. Saturday through today. So, and I don't assume that there's any of those for them. So yeah, he's a bottom end bench spot now, unfortunately there. So that's a bummer. That's a really bummer but the Colts, they got Quentin Nelson back. They got Wentz back. They did lose another offensive tackle. And Eric Fisher wasn't going to be ready for the start of the season at left tackle. They're down like 2 tackles at left tackle right now.
Yeah. I know that Nelson was the best lineman they had, but I don't know where the tackles stack up in terms of how, I guess if you lose 2 of them, the replacement level is pretty low. I think a lot of times that happens, like a linebacker misses a game and you're like, that doesn't even move the point spread. Who cares? But then you don't realize they're also missing 2 other linebackers and the guy playing is just totally over his, out of his depth. And then it's like, well, it's not that they lost the guy, it's what they have to replace him. And that's always the tricky part with the offensive line. Cause who knows how good the second or third string offensive lineman is.
Sure. That's always a big issue. And you see the one exception is like center. You lose centers, it's just deadly.
Well, the center, especially like mid-game, that was like an old school betting thing where if like a team loses its center that week and they've got to replace it, the guy is basically setting the cadence at the line and everybody gets in sync off the center's count, or the center snap. And so, so I'm looking at this. So Will Holden is now the starting left tackle. You got Eric Fisher and Sam Tevy are out. Right tackle is Braden Smith. So I don't know. Will Holden is he played. I mean, he was hurt in the playoffs last year, but he's not like a total newbie. He's played a bit. He joined the Colts at the end of 2020. I don't know much about it, but maybe he's can be serviceable.
Yeah, and he got hurt for the playoffs last year too in the case of Holden. So just a lot of stuff going on there. Before we get any more end of preseason talk, a quick note from our friends at Sleeper. What do your fraternity brothers Steve, Katie from work, and your grandma all have in common? They're all waiting for that invite to your fantasy football league. There's no better way to hang out, no easier way to smack talk, and no more customizable platform to host your fantasy leagues on this year than Sleeper. Whether you have a redraft league or a dynasty league that's been around for 10 years, Sleeper has everything you need in one app. Incredible commissioner tools and customizations, built-in messaging, support for a snake draft, auction draft, and best ball leagues, blazing fast news, stats, scores, all in a beautifully designed mobile app and website that makes every other app feel like a horse and buggy. Sleeper is the fastest growing fantasy sports platform for a reason, and all the cool commissioners are switching to Sleeper and not looking back. Don't just take my word for it. Download Sleeper on iOS or Android and see for yourself. You have nothing to lose. It's free. Thanks to Sleeper. I do have one league on Sleeper. It is a good app. I like it quite a bit. So we had our final preseason game, set of preseason games this weekend. Only 3 this year. Get a full week and a half for everybody to have their next game, and almost 2 weeks for most teams. Just the Bucs and the Cowboys, obviously. And so that's I think it's a little bit different this year, trying to figure out, okay, what moves are teams going to make? Saw the Lions release Brashad Perriman. Okay, I wasn't really drafting him anyhow, but it is a guy we've heard of gets cut. We're going to start to see some of these roster moves, just like, and sometimes it matters.
Well,
Sometimes
Latavius Murray is the other big one. Like the Latavius Murray, Tony Jones is had a good camp, and the Saints beat writer for The Athletic, I don't know her name. I read the article, but sorry if I forgot the name. But I think she speculated that Latavius Murray is not going to make the team.
I've seen that a couple of times. Catherine, bear with me. I'll tell you in a second.
Yeah, if you can grab her name. But anyway, she speculated, and she's just a beat writer speculating, but she knows the team, that Murray's not going to make the team. So that's interesting. I think Murray will get signed though if he doesn't. So like one of these teams that we look at like the Rams, or we look at one of these teams that doesn't seem to have a lot of competition for running back. The Ravens. What about the Ravens? Latavius Murray is such a Raven. The perfect Raven. That's the thing.
Although he's also not a pass catcher, though.
He is a little bit, though. He's
Catherine
a little bit.
Terrell, by the way.
Catherine Terrell.
Terrell. She's a good follow.
Okay, so yeah, it was her article in The Athletic that I read, and so she's speculating. But Latavius Murray is more like Chris Carson level pass catcher. He's not a great pass catcher, but remember when Kamara was out, he would catch passes a couple weeks, and he had 43 targets in 2019, the year Kamara missed a couple games. He's had 53 targets in 2015 with the Raiders, caught 41 balls. He can catch a little. He's not great, but He's a veteran and knows what he's doing on a team that's contending. I could see there. He's a perfect Raven, Latavius Murray. I'll just make that prediction. The Ravens pick him up cheaply if he gets cut. He's not cut yet.
Not get cut. Yeah,
he might not. He's not cut yet, but that would be a perfect fit because Tyson Williams is not. He's just a guy, and then Justice Hill.
He's just
really,
a guy because we don't know who he is. That's the thing, though.
Well, he's also 24 and was even drafted. I mean, it's not like no one was talking about him before Dobbins got hurt. It wasn't like Tony Jones, who was, rocketing up the people are starting to draft him before they even cut Murray, before they're cutting Murray. Like nobody was really talking about this guy until Dobbins got hurt. So I think he's more likely just a guy. Even in college, I mean, he never had more than 500 yards rushing. So you don't know. He could be good, but looks like an undrafted guy, 24 years old. So I would say that that the Ravens will probably be in the market for somebody.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I mean, I know they're going to add somebody. It's just a question of who. Oh, and what becomes available. Carlos Hyde. I don't think that's going to happen now in fact, Carlos Hyde, I saw a tweet going around talking about how much usage Hyde got with the first team offense.
I don't care about Robinson. That. I don't care about
I don't either. Mario was like kind of mocking that a little bit, but
it's like, dude, if you just lost ETN and you want to have a good team, you're not going to use Robinson 75% of the snaps in preseason. That's just stupid. Like you're just going to mix it up. And it just, so that's one thing. The second thing is like, even if they weren't doing that to preserve Robinson, if they're not even conscious of that, like, why would you just assume this usage in the preseason, it portends the usage in the regular season?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I agree. And I actually I'm not worried about that either. So I think, I'm not really too concerned about that. In fact, I'm hoping maybe if I've got a chance to get Robinson late third, early fourth because of that, if that's where I'm sitting in a draft, hopefully he falls as a result. Although I just think the Dobbins injury just takes that one more running back out of the picture there, and it's just going to be a problem. I think that's the thing. So
I had Robinson ahead of Dobbins anyway, though. So to me, was he going behind Dobbins in drafts? Because to me, Dobbins doesn't affect that. And Edwards is going to basically replace Dobbins, maybe a few spots lower.
It's just, I think it'll have if you're looking for a running back in the third round, Edwards is not that where Dobbins could have been.
Right. That's true. Right.
And you look at DeAndre Swift and, his groin injury and how he's gotten pushed down a little bit because people are concerned, when the coach says, I'm concerned about him being ready for week 1. Okay, maybe that's someone else you don't want to take.
And he had groin surgery. He had groin surgery a couple years ago. So that's
I could have taken Swift, but I took Robinson. I mean, it's the same.
I think Robinson's a no-brainer over Swift right now. It's not even, I don't think that's even a choice. I think, Swift has upside, but I mean, you got the guy who's the starter. The Hyde thing's great. If I can get Robinson in the 4th or something because of that Hyde rumor, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think that might be the play. Hey, before we move on, a quick note from our Blue Wire sponsors. Okay, so you're almost done with drafts, although most people aren't. I know I'm not. I've got a draft today, 2 tomorrow. We've got our main events this weekend coming up. What sort of things are you learning from drafts so far that you've done that you're going to apply this weekend? Is there anything that you've done all these drafts now and you're changing how you're drafting it all?
Not really. I kind of like, I guess a couple things. I've started to realize, and maybe this is not correct, but that I like drafting at the back end. I like that early 3rd round pick. In the 3rd round reversal. Is this set my KDS? Did I get the 8th pick or no? I can still move it around. Okay. I didn't realize I still could set this. This is going to lock pretty soon. I'm doing this as we talk, but I'm like, I set this a couple weeks ago and I'm like, changed my mind. But basically, I like the late picks. I really like drafting toward the end. And McCaffrey, I guess it's a crystal ball thing with the health. McCaffrey, like maybe he's just going to be the number 1 guy by a mile, like he was a couple years ago. But I guess I feel like I like the end of the round because I think that there's really no rhyme or reason to the order these guys go in. Like I could see Jonathan Taylor going to 10 or Chubb going to 10, and I could take those guys at 5. You can see Devontae Adams at 5, or he could go at 9. You could see Tyreek Hill at the turn, or you can see him taking 5, or Diggs, or one of those receivers, Metcalf, whatever. So I think in the back end of the first round, you're getting 2 really good players that really could go anywhere after the top 3 or 4 picks. It doesn't make any difference. So give me those 2 guys. There's really, to me, there's two choices. One, do you want McCaffrey, Cook, who are clearly the 1-2 on everybody's board almost, and then pick late in the 3rd, late in the 2nd? Or do you want 2 guys who are basically as good as the 5th pick, and then an early 3rd?
Right.
And I'm kind of going toward that because Cook and McCaffrey I don't feel like they're peak LaDainian Tomlinson, peak Priest Holmes, peak. McCaffrey is that. And so is Cook, actually, when he's healthy. I mean, he's amazing. They're both like that, but they don't have that sort of like invincible thing. It would be as if like Zeke Elliott, with his injury history, were getting McCaffrey or Cook usage. If that were the case, then you have like the peak LaDainian Tomlinson back. But I'm just a little nervous about those 2 guys. Now, maybe that, again, I'm crystal balling injuries, and then it should just be the no-brainer to choose 1, 2, and then choose the last picks. I could see the argument for that. And in fact, in my last Beat Chris list, I picked 9th, and I got the first choice. And I was like thinking, oh, maybe I should have left it at 1 if I was going to get the first choice and just take McCaffrey and deal with that. So I don't know. What do you think about getting the first pick? Like, do you want 1 as your first choice?
So I did it. I don't want 1 in a 3rd round reversal draft. I think in a standard snake draft, yes, I do. Yeah. Because then you're,
so 3rd round reversal. So you're not just all, because I
think people need to know the difference there. I mean, it's a big difference. There was a guy the guy that had the 1 pick and beat Jeff Erickson 2 on Friday night. He wasn't quite aware of 3rd round reversal. It was the first time he had done it in an FFC draft. And I guess
he was like, what the hell?
The rules. And he goes, oh, 3rd round reversal. This is the first time I've done this. I don't like this. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, the first pick, No, but
I'm setting my KDS in 3rd round reversals to get towards the back. I want that for sure. And I'm doing a 14-teamer. It's even more of an issue, I think, in a 14-teamer that I definitely want to be at the back end of the first round.
Yeah, that's true. That changes things a little bit. But are we just wrong not to just say, look, it's McCaffrey, man. It's the guy who's going to catch 100 passes perhaps as a running back. You can't compete with that. In 2019, having McCaffrey was such an advantage. I didn't even want him. Somebody took Barkley first and it beat Chris List 2 years ago. So I got stuck with McCaffrey at 2. I wanted Barkley. Barkley had a injury plagued year.
Despite yourself, yes.
And I had, a top 25, top 30 overall team going into the playoffs because I had McCaffrey. I also had a couple other good guys, but it was like, I think I had Godwin, and then he and Evans got hurt in the playoffs. I had Godwin and Evans, and they were great in the regular season. They got hurt, but
oh yeah,
it was like you couldn't really do wrong if you picked McCaffrey, and he's healthy now. So like, shouldn't that outweighs like, oh well, I got Tyreek Hill and Antonio Gibson. It's like, yeah, but he got McCaffrey. And you're still getting Justin Jefferson or McLaurin or Mixon or CEH or
it's really
AJ
that
Brown.
Drop into the 3rd round that really
it's the third. It's the 3rd round that you care about, right? So
yeah,
what are you looking at in the 3rd round? Well, I mean, yeah, you're going to get just one of those many receivers, that Cooper Kupp, that area of receiver, or, Mike Evans. He doesn't get there, Mike Evans sometimes, or Godwin. Or you get, I wouldn't take Swift. I wanted Swift earlier, but I'm not going to take him probably that early. There's no running back I really like there, to be honest. So I'm probably taking a receiver. You could, maybe get Kittle or Mahomes or something like that with your 3rd, but like you can get a really good number 1 receiver with McCaffrey, and then you get either generic, DJ Moore, Mari Cooper type, or you get quarterback or tight end, versus getting 3 guys you really are happy with, but you don't have McCaffrey. I think it's arguable if you're not going to, again, play the injury crystal ball, that McCaffrey is still the play in 3rd round reversal. That's what I'm kind of wrestling with, whether, it's so obvious. The thing is, like, I think one thing that you can fall into, one trap, is that you look at McCaffrey and you're like, he's not great for number 1 overall, or he's overrated for what people think he is because they're remembering 2019. And that may be true, but he could still be overrated and still be by far the most valuable player. And I think sometimes we rate players on whether they're overrated or not, whether he's a good value or not, based on what the market says. But it might be that he's number 1 with a bullet, and it doesn't really matter if, he's 2019 McCaffrey or 2018 McCaffrey. It doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, the thing is, we don't have the gift of prophecy. We don't know if he's going to be vintage McCaffrey or he's going to be a vintage McCaffrey.
Right.
You know,
well, that's what I mean. But 2018, he didn't get that many carries, but he was still, so valuable because the catches, like his skill set and environment make him the number one guy easily if he's healthy, and Cook the number two guy easily if he's healthy. Those two guys are no brainers. We don't know with Kamara and the new QB, although Winston is good for him. Jonathan Taylor, I love, but I mean, it's, there's some variables there with Nelson in the line and Wentz. Elliott, 4 yards of carry last year, terrible per catch numbers. Henry with the carries and doesn't catch passes. Aaron Jones never got more than like 220 carries. There's all the question marks. But if everybody's healthy, if we're doing my health neutral rankings, McCaffrey and Cook are such no-brainers. It's unbelievable. You can't even. So if we just do the health neutral rankings because we're like, we can't predict this and they're healthy now, am I crazy not to, was it crazy to pick 9th and take, I got Zeke at 9, which I was happy with, but still, is that crazy not to have McCaffrey?
It's some very good players would argue yes. And in fact, they just ranked their KDS 1 through 12. I think it is. I still think it's really different on third round reversal. I think that's the one thing that
I'm talking third round reversal. I'm presuming third round reversal here.
I still don't think it's crazy.
I moved 1 to my top 1 just now I went 1, 10, 11, 9, 12. So I just Cook I like, but Cook I think like the injury again, it's crystal balling. He was healthy. He's missed time like every year, and he's more like between the tackles, more rough. Although McCaffrey got popped a lot in 2019. He finally, he showed up on the injury report late in the year, and then last year he just broke down.
What spot do you want the least?
Because there's so much variability, probably like 4, I guess. But I get Taylor there, and I'm fine. I probably get a good receiver in round 2. There's really no spot. Because it's so, it's really interesting this year. It's actually more fun to draft this year than in prior years because I think it's way less scripted, the drafts. Like I got Zeke at 9, right? You can get Jonathan Taylor at 10. You get Barkley in the second round, or Barkley could go 6. Devontae Adams could go 6, or he can go 10. Tyreek Hill could go 6. It's wide open. So I don't really dislike any of the slots. I mean, I just feel like you could get the extent to which you have a hard time drafting is going to be the extent to which it doesn't go your way based on who takes which player where, not because of what slot you had. It's going to be because the guys in your league took the guys you wanted. And so, but you just don't know. So I'm kind of like, it's wide open. I like I'm choosing 1 first. Now, then I'm going like, the last 4 picks, and then I'll, so right now my KDS, my last pick is 5, just because I picked there a couple times.
Yeah, that's right. So I just want to throw some, and by the way, our friend Matt Modica just chimed in and goes, it should always be 1 and then whatever for KDS.
Yeah.
CMC plus that late second player in the 3-4 turn is setting you up for success, is what he says. So I think it's a CMC only thing. It's not a Dalvin Cook thing.
Yeah, I know that I just moved that to 1, and in the B Chris list, I could have done it and I didn't. I was like, I want to draft at the end, but I'm thinking about it like a crystal ball with, using the injury crystal ball is, it's very dangerous to play that game. Even though I have a vibe about like Antonio Gibson makes me nervous. Darrell Henderson makes me nervous. Cook and McCaffrey make me a little nervous. But so what? Like everybody makes you nervous. Anyone could get hurt, right? I mean, Barkley makes me nervous, but because he's going where he's going, I'm happy to have him. But if he's your first round pick at 12 or your second round pick, you're still pretty upset if he's out for the year. So I think it's probably better not to engage in too much of that, unless for some reason your misgivings on the guy are so strong that you can't explain it, but you're like, I just have a really bad feeling about this. Fine. Heed that, get out. But I don't feel like that with McCaffrey. I just feel like, he's a low BMI guy who got hurt last year and maybe isn't suited for a 280 carry workload, but that's not enough for me. Okay.
So there you go. Hey, any parting thoughts before we sign off today?
No, I'm curious to see what my KDS is for the the high stakes prime time, and I don't know, man. Are you going to be drafting there in Vegas for me? You're going to be announcing my picks? We're going to be doing it that way.
I'm going to be at the table for a little bit there. Yeah. Okay. Although I probably won't announce it, but unless
you should announce it. I should text it to you, and then you should announce it. That's how we should do it. It'll be funny.
You're going to be on the clock, though. That's the tough part.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, it takes just as long to text. I could type it to you.
Technology will never fail us. I mean, but,
no. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'll have it ready on the app also, but I think it'd be pretty funny to do it that way.
Right on.
All right.
All right. Well, big thanks to WinBet, our sponsor, sponsoring all of our exclusive title sponsor for our fantasy podcasts. We appreciate them. WYNNBET. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks for all the interaction. We'll be back at you again tomorrow with Jake and Joe. And Liss and I are going to go do XM right now. So thanks for doing this. Take care.